Welcome to Be Customer Led, where we'll explore how leading experts in customer and employee experience are navigating organizations through their own journey to be customer led, and the actions and behaviors employees and businesses exhibit to get there. And now your host, Marbu Brown.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Be Customer Led. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited about the topic that we're going to talk about, even though it's a difficult topic, one of those maybe sometimes we'd rather not talk about, but we ought to. And that is estate planning and end-of-life affairs, and what does customer experience look like in that difficult period of life. And we've got a great guest with us today to help us talk about those things, and that's Emily Cisek. She is the CEO of a company called Paige, and they are working with banks and with customers to deal with some of those issues that people have to deal with in that context. But maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So let's do this. We always like to begin the program by letting our audience know a bit about the backstory of our guest directly from the source. And so, Emily, why don't you take a few minutes and share your journey with us, how you came to be the CEO of Paige, and hey, you founded the company. So why don't you go ahead and give us the backstory?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for having me. The reason Paige actually came about was because I lost 3 family members back in 2018. It was my nephew and my 2 grandmothers that you can see here. And because of that experience and having that under a microscope, if you will, being able to compare and contrast the experiences. On one hand, one grandmother had everything really buttoned up. So all we had to focus on was celebrating her life and being present and spending time with those who mattered most, not thinking about the logistical items. On the other hand, my other grandmother, she had some stuff done, but she was further away. There was scavenger hunt. A big part of what people don't realize is painful for families is not just the estate legal kind of components, but the actual finding of what matters most and having that accessible. And then on top of that, with my nephew, while a 13-month-old doesn't have assets and things like that, there is still a set of family memories and family things that they just need to be supported on. And so in that moment, after experiencing those things, I just knew I wanted to make, even if I could make the experience 20% better, then I was doing what I was meant to do in that season of life. And so that's how it all came about. I started to do more research. And then in April 1st of 2020, as the world was shutting down, I was going on the mission to make this process of planning, organization, and family collaboration, truthfully, that much easier. And so that's how it all began and why it began. And we've been around since then and serving banks kind of nationwide, their members and customers, to help them with this transition.
Yep. So tell us a little bit more about specifically how Paige helps people with this transition. Because I know, like one of the things that banks have been shifting their posture on is something like safety deposit boxes, right? And look, I know that the whole process of dealing with these types of affairs in banks has its own set of particular challenges associated with it, right? So talk a little bit more about the specifics of how you guys get into helping banks and their customers with these things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So safe deposit box is a great way to start, because the way I like to describe it to bank boards or community banks is that it is truly a digital safe deposit box, but that allows you to collaborate with your family. It enables you to have control of who, when, why, and what has access. But the most important part is we are a Paige If you think about the knighthood days and how knights would have a page that set them up and protected them for battle, that is what we do for our members and customers. So they're
Interesting,
guided through. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So they are guided through. They get this little page helping them figure out what they need, when they need it, why they need it. I think the biggest stigma to prevent people from start doing this is because they're overwhelmed and don't know where to start. And so Paige equips you on where you need to start and kind of coaches you through that process and enables you to collaborate with family a lot easier than it is to sit down at a dinner table and say, hey, this is where this thing is and this thing, because you have that true guidance through the platform.
Yeah. So this digital safety deposit box, like what are some of the kinds of things that people are putting in it that are going to be super important when the time comes that people need to open that box and get something out?
Yeah. So think of our platform in two realms. There's the wealth, which is the logistical, the will, the estate, the power of attorney, those sorts of things. But then there's the wisdom, which is the memories, the heirlooms, the family recipes. And so our platform blends those things together and enables you not just to capture the logistical aspects of what you need when someone passes away, but even today, like passwords. I don't know about you, but me and my spouse don't trade passwords and accounts very easily until Paige that gave us that place that we could kind of organize and collaborate on those things. And so that side, is more methodical in coaching you through, but then we marry it with almost a timeline or social media-esque realm that is all family centered, all family milestones, memories and messages, which was interesting when we first came up with the concept of the messages is we thought, oh, this is a way to send instructions to your family after they pass. But actually how it's been used is moms have been writing emails to their kids with memories attached to them so that when they turn 18, they have this each year recap of their life so that the stories and legacy pieces aren't just what we put out there into the world, but it's what's really important to us, our families, and our legacy.
Well, isn't that the truth that when we put together software or tools or any of those things, people always find ways to use them that are beyond what we had even imagined or conceived, right? And that's a great example of that type of thing. But I'm curious about something. So, there's a lot of things you can store digitally, but I guess there's some things that you probably have to store physically. Like when we start talking about heirlooms, it could be jewelry, it could be other stuff like that, and they need a physical place to be. And maybe that physical place isn't the bank or something like that, but are you finding that people would sometimes use Paige to give people instructions about where some of those things are, where to find them? Does it help them to organize to that level? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So there's different components and parts where the will, for example, in most states, there's probably 7 states where you can have a fully digital will, but all the other states, you need this physical copy. And so in the process of you sharing it on the platform, you're also letting your loved ones know exactly where that will, like that physical will is located. But it also helps with passwords. For example, not all of our customers feel comfortable putting passwords into the platform, which is fine. We are not here to tell you how you manage your legacy. We're here to help you build your legacy. And so in the password section, we even have a spot that says more of a pen and paper person. Let your kids know or let your family know where that sticky note on your keyboard is, where that document, the Word doc or Excel doc is on your computer. Let them know what the safe code is, because if it's in the safe, they need to find it. It ultimately helps eliminate or lessen the scavenger hunt, which is a big piece of the pain after somebody passes. It's not just the legal side of it that people don't realize. It's that scavenger hunt that is the most painful part of the process.
So you've been doing this for a bit now, and I imagine you have some stories about how this helped people to take a little bit out of the pain out of this difficult time. Because when it gets right down to it, whether it's planning an estate or end of life affairs, or it's managing the estate or the end of life affairs. These are some of the most emotionally charged times, in people's lives, right? You got any favorite stories of how Paige might have helped people to navigate this period and take a bit of the thing out of it for them?
Yeah, I actually do have a great example that hits home for me. One of the banks that we kind of are working with, their CEO, his wife had terminal cancer. And being a banker, he had all of the methodical pieces together, the finances, all of that. And so he had it put into Paige very easily and had that all organized. And so, but what he didn't realize is his wife was the one who always took the pictures, the milestones, all of those things. And so, what they did and how they used the platform that was most meaningful for them is his wife actually pre recorded videos and messages for his kids who he had 4 kids under 15 so that someday they can be delivered on their graduation day or their wedding day. And that kind of emotional connection is something that you can't replicate through other means of, retention at a bank or those sorts of things. When you show up for your customers and people, supporting them in these most difficult moments and enabling them to share these deep legacy stories that enable their kids to be empowered to understand who their parents were if they weren't there. Like, there is nothing more powerful than that. A lot of times, the customers that we work with or the banks that we work with, they focus in a lot on the transactional side of the platform. But what is actually it's the meld of both and having that emotional tie where you are connecting and collaborating with your family. Yes, it's tied to the bank, but it's this private place for that family to have those opportunities to create the legacy that they want as a family unit and what they may have in the future, whether certain members are there or not.
Well, it's interesting because in my book, I talk about the pieces that come together for customer obsession. Part of it is engaging personally, deliver exceptionally, and connect emotionally. And what you said just now is a perfect example of what it means to connect emotionally, right? And you're right that a lot of times banks or other people who are helping us with these difficult moments in life, they get the transaction part, they get all of the technical part, but sometimes they don't get the part about connecting emotionally. So I see how Paige can really help banks and other people really help their customers with solving this, right? So let me ask you, when you think about a feature in Paige or a use case for Paige, what tends to get the strongest reaction from users? The example you gave just now was amazing. But are there one or two features or use cases that really connects with customers very strongly?
Yeah. So we built with Page in a way where it has multiple front doors to the product. So depending on who you are, the roles you play in your life, and what I mean by roles is if you're a father, if you're a business owner, if you're these certain things, your journey is going to look a little bit different than a mom who's the family CFO, or you're your inheritor. And so you're seeing the experience from you're the next generation. So we've been able to, depending on those roles, define and help you kind of take that first step. And so for what I would call more methodical folks, starting with our documents and being able to here are the 10 things that you need. If you do not have these, then let's help you create them. And then the control of when they get to decide when, why, and how things are delivered. So it's not like a Dropbox where you just drop these files. It is actually guiding you through creating these things and then deciding, hey, I may want to share my will with my spouse today, but I don't want to share it with my kids until they turn 25. Another example is that 55 plus woman. She wants all her grandkids to have all the stories and all the recipes. And so she's going to jump into the memories and messages feature that I kind of talked about already. So it's dependent on who they are. And our job as Paige is to enable them, to guide them through. Here's where you want to start based on what we know about you. So it's very personalized to their journey. And so to say, oh, this feature over another feature, it's not about the features, it's about the human. It's not about the stuff, it's about the person. So that is how we guide all of our principles in the software, is how are we trying to make this person feel? What are we trying to help them achieve? And then the features come from there. But it always is that human focus for us.
Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of times when people think about memories, they just think about pictures. But just in having this conversation with you, it's shown how those memories go way beyond pictures and how people can take the time to put those memories together in a not just a methodical way, but wow, a structured way, if you will, so that people can enjoy those memories and everything like that. So I gotta ask you, are there certain people who tend to gravitate towards Paige more than others? Tell me a little bit about that. Who tends to be the core users for Paige?
Yeah. So the core persona that we serve extremely well, it does skew female, but in general, it's the family CFO is what we call it. And so the family member who is managing the finances, managing a lot of these things, they are, and usually in this day and age, is the mom who wants to focus on legacy, but also has the need to kind of manage both her aging parents and her kids and protecting kind of what she's built. And so that family CFO is the archetype that is our core audience. From there, it's typically that parent above that family CFO. So those parents who are hyper focused on kind of their legacy, they know they're going to need things passed on. They may not want they may not be the first person that comes to the software, and their daughter or son has to actually say, hey, I've built this thing to help contribute so that you can put everything together really easily. I will guide you through it and help you. So those two audiences tend to be kind of where it melds. Where the network growth happens, though, where the invites happen, the family collaboration, is always the 55 plus women and the millennial moms, because they are then sharing it with their spouse, their kids, their parents. So it starts that kind of ecosystem. And ultimately, the product isn't what keeps the engagement. It is the people. It is, oh, grandma added this other thing. I'm going to go check out what it was. Or dad added me to his will. I'm going to log in and see what happened there. So it's their behaviors and their engagement that actually drives them to use the product more, not the product themselves.
Well, it's kind of interesting as you talk about this, because the way you're talking about it right now, it doesn't feel so much like a state or end of life thing, but something that people can rally around and they can begin to engage with over time. And then it comes to fruition when that time comes and they need to use it. But because they've been participating in this over time, it doesn't feel that way so much. I mean, are there people you find that they kind of know they ought to do this, but they just keep putting it off, or they just like try to avoid it? I mean, do you come across folks that fit that kind of a bill, and how do you convert them?
Yeah. So we're all naturally wired to be like, oh, we don't want to think about it. We don't want to talk about it, especially in our culture. What ultimately drives somebody to come in is they have some kind of family event. They buy a house, or they have some key life event. They have a child. Those are kind of the initial phases. But what's different about what we're doing is yes, we're promising a better transition at end of life, but we're trying to help you manage your life today easier. So if your husband at the doctor's with the kids and he doesn't remember what medicine they're on, he can log into Paige. If it's your family is at the holiday time and grandma's sharing her secret recipe and you want to put it into Paige. There's these.
Grandma's actually sharing her secret recipe.
Yeah. I mean, we're hoping, maybe you coax her or you just take notes as she's making it. You're just putting it right and typing it right in Paige. Sorry, grandma, I got it. I captured it while you were doing it. Yeah. So that's part of the way that we kind of come in, because we don't sell ourselves as like an end of life platform. We sell ourselves as a like support system and kind of connecting that wealth and wisdom and that family dynamic years before there's ever a transition, which that relationship and those years of that relationship matter more and are more important. Because if you show up as a platform or even as a bank at the end and haven't built a relationship or supported them in the process, it's already too late. And so if you can be less, I don't want to say scary, but if you are more approachable in how you enter them into the platform. And like I said, we have multiple front doors. So if we can tell, hey, somebody just got invited in by their family member, they have no idea we're this end of life platform. We need to give them the information that matters to them related to their family, and then coach them up into little things, bite-sized pieces of things that they can start doing. So then they start realizing, oh, this has a lot of value for me today, which will ultimately drive them to a lot of value for tomorrow.
Well, the interesting thing is the point that you said about if you don't already have a relationship and you come to that critical time, it's already too late. I mean, the key word there is relationship, right? And I think for a lot of, especially financial institutions, they have a relationship with their customers, but they don't necessarily have a relationship because their customer may come in and open an account. And there's a lot of things that customer does with the bank that's on autopilot, but they don't really engage, right? But making something like this available to those customers creates another relationship point on another level that actually might stimulate some, ongoing engagement from a perspective with their financial institution. So a family has Paige. What do you hope they say about it? After they've used it for some period of time, after they use it during one of those critical periods, what do you hope that they say about it?
That it's the most humanistic supporting softwares that they've ever used, that it makes them feel like they have peace of mind and control over their legacy and what happens today and what happens tomorrow. And I mention humanistic a lot, but that's because, again, Paige is about supporting people. It's not about the things that they have. And so if they feel that way, then we're doing our jobs in my mind.
So when you think about financial institutions that are working with their customers, I mean, like when it comes to these kinds of major life transitions or sensitive things like these, what kind of mistakes do you think that they actually make relative to this? I mean, like, are there any particular things that you have come across where you see, these institutions are making a mistake here?
I think the number one thing that's most common is that in their enrollment process or onboarding process, they aren't capturing beneficiary information. It's usually something that you can skip over, and not understanding that next generation from step one is a big miss. And so what happens, what the result of that is that someday down the line, let's say they've never captured their beneficiary information, someday down the line, their kids, if they don't have Paige and they don't have any information, they'll know maybe this bank exists, but they will show up to the bank with a pile of papers and say, hey, I know my mom or dad have an account here, but I have no idea how to access it. Can you please help me? And the bank, their hands are tied. They can't do it. And it's even happening in smaller communities where they might know the beneficiary, but their hands are tied because they're not listed. They don't maybe have the legal documents that they need right away. And that is I think the most common thing that's happening, there is more and more onboarding flows and things that they're focused on that ask that question and make that built into the process. But I still hear of horror stories from branch managers and et cetera from some of our customers where they're coming in just frantic to figure out where things are and you can't really do anything. And how helpless can it feel as somebody on the other side who wants to support them, who wants to help them, but their hands are tied?
Yeah, I've heard of cases like that where, somebody was planning to do something and then suddenly that opportunity was gone. Right. And so it's very important. So for us to wrap up, what advice would you give somebody who's building in a space involves these kinds of issues, death, finances, family dynamics? I mean, what's your advice?
Just start and don't think about the end goal. Think about what you can do today to get started, to get connected, to protect as much as you can, because a little goes a long way. Even if the one thing is you lift a note that you have a binder in your safe or you have something like that, is eliminating a lot of pain, a lot of stress, and a lot of the scavenger hunt. So I think just start and it doesn't have to be you manage it all in one day. Just take that first step and it'll be a lot easier and will give you peace of mind a lot quicker than you'd think.
Cool. So again, we've been talking about a sensitive topic. Again, sometimes it's one that people want to avoid, but it's one that we shouldn't avoid. So tell people, how do they get to Paige? If they want to learn more about Paige, or how do they get there?
Yeah. So you can visit us at our website. It's go-page.com, or visit one of your local community banks and encourage them to look at Paige, because that could be then something that's a benefit built into your community banking kind of value that they provide. But we do allow members from anywhere to sign up directly on our site, and we keep it very reasonably cost. So just go-page.com.
And how do people get a hold of you, Emily?
Hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn. So my name is Emily Cisek, Cisek. I am probably the only one on LinkedIn with that name. So if you find Paige and you find Emily Cisek, I'm there. I will answer DMs, all of that. So you can find me. I'm very approachable from that perspective.
Cool. And that's Paige as opposed to Page. So
That's correct.
We'll make sure to put that on the screen. So for people who are watching this, they can actually see that
Awesome.
on the screen. So cool. And then it'll be in show notes and stuff like that for folks who are listening to this on any of the regular podcast platforms. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. We've talked about a topic, again, that's not one of the, topics that everybody jumps into all the time. But I think it gives us a great perspective on this whole aspect of emotional connection, and one of those areas where it's very important for people to pay attention. And I think that, especially with financial institutions and stuff like that, one of those areas that they ought to pay close attention to. So I want to thank you again for spending this time with me on Be Customer Led. And to all of you listeners, I want to thank you, listeners and viewers. I want to thank you for spending the time with us today. And I want to encourage you to come back next time, because we're going to have another exciting topic, another stirring topic for you to pick up some ideas from that you can go and use right away to enhance your own experience or the experience of the customers of your business. So thanks again for joining us on Be Customer Led. And for today, that's all, folks.
Thanks for listening to Be Customer Led with Marbu Brown. We are grateful to our audience for the gift of their time. Be sure to visit us at becustomerled.com for more episodes. Leave us feedback on how we're doing, or tell us what you want to hear more about. Until next time, we're out.